Hi friends, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel. So China GDP numbers are out and they're not so great. Let's just jump in the headlines and take a look together. As you can see, China warns domestic recovery is not solid as GDP misses estimates. So second quarter GDP, it came out at 6.3% to the upside, and the estimate was 7.1. So the estimates are off by quite a bit. June retail sales are up 3.1 and factory output up 4.4. They haven't changed their interest rates. One of the things that I want you guys to think about is sort of what is going on over there. You can have falling exports, weak retail sales, and then the property sector is struggling. As you know, you can look at the history of this. This is here where we are right now. It is, still growing, but it's not the double-digit growth that we used to have. This particular quarter was essentially the pandemic. It crashed by quite a bit, went back up by quite a bit, but now you're sort of back to a more normalized growth, but it's not double digit like you saw, say, during the early 2000s. The other thing is their population is actually shrinking. We talked about this several times on the channel, and put on top of another really interesting trend is that youth unemployment is really high. Now, China faces the same problem that many countries face, where you have, a population of people who are old, and you need essentially young workers to, pay money into the system and support their parents, etc. If the youth aren't working, and it's really high, it's 21.3% of our unemployed. This is between 16 and 24, and I believe overall, as a nation, their unemployment is like around 5-ish%. But this is not great. 1.3% for young people. It's a different system over there. For those of you who've never been to China, younger people will work and they'll work in factories, they'll work in restaurants, all these kind of things. But it kind of reflection of the opportunity for young people, and also for the future. It's not great when you have just a large population of people that aren't working. I'm thinking as well as just talking with you guys where. It's a different system than, say, in the U.S., where kids can live at home for much longer. Although I guess during the pandemic, a lot of kids did move home, and that was sort of a changing trend. But I think this would certainly damage the property sector, right? If kids, say in China, can't go out and get a job and then get their own place, et cetera, that's going to hurt, the property sector. And the property sector is like a quarter of China's economy. So I think all the things are connected. Essentially, you just have a slowdown, right? The other thing too is essentially sentiment is not so great. So this is an interesting thing. This is a trend line of Chinese people putting their money into bank accounts, essentially, where the Americans are starting to take their money out of bank accounts. Either you could say with the pandemic that they just want to go out and spend more money, or just the stimulus money is gone, and so they just don't have as much cash. But either way, Chinese people are putting more money, just putting it in the bank. If you take a look at this is actually an inflation chart of comparing China to other countries. So this is your headline inflation. You can see here, we're comparing US, Euro, UK, Japan. You're all looking at, inflation like, say, between 4 and then UK like really high, like it around above 8, where China, their headline inflation is roughly 0. If you take a look at their core inflation, so you're heading towards what the concern is deflation, and again, it is much lower than other countries. So they're facing a problem of deflation and a shrinking population, youth unemployment, and the property sector is struggling because of fears of growth in China. Oil will probably be going down. You can see here, oil slips on a weak China GDP. And we'll see how OPEC responds. Usually they just cut production because they want to keep prices up. But, I don't have a direct bat phone to OPEC, so I don't know what they're going to do exactly. But I'm just saying they may decide to do that. Regarding their property sales, there's a major decline, essentially, with the real estate market over there. So I'll show you guys some numbers here. It was pretty interesting. So the way they measure real estate is very different in the USA. That you'll talk about home sales and stuff like that, whereas in China, they're talking about property sales by floor area. Basically, if you've been to Asia, many people live in towers. So, it's an easier way to measure things. It's like, floor area, like how much space. And so they're saying it declined. Property sales by floor area declined 28.1%. And then I guess the last time they measured it was at 19.7% decline. So things are definitely going down. And then this is a property investment down by around 20%. And then you're also looking at, I mean, it's all to the downside. Property investment in the first 6 months fell 7.1 and then 7.2. So I think what these numbers are, I think this must be by area, because it's here. It says for June, property investment totaled 1.2 trillion yuan, falling 20.6% from a year earlier and 21%. But then you have this other one here that says property investment fell. Oh, okay. So this is like the first 6 months. So what you're doing is you're comparing, I think it's each quarter, and then this one's June and the other one's 6 months. That's what it is. So, but either way, it just shows that things are declining. You also have new construction, measured by floor area, right? It's like how much, space are they actually building new. That's down 24%. I mean, why build new stuff when you can't sell the stuff you already have? My understanding is the property sector is being held up by essentially the government. So had the government not stepped in with essentially bailing these side of companies out, it would probably be even worse. So that definitely doesn't look good for them. And moreover, do you guys know, we talk about sometimes on this channel, I think most likely the growth is going to be India or Vietnam as countries, pull away from China. China essentially, for whatever reason, keeps, getting closer to Russia. This was an interesting article was saying Russia and China have increased their joint military drills. You can see this chart going up here. So they don't do like a ton of drills together, but they are increasing them. And essentially, after Putin invaded, Ukraine, you would think that, well, I just don't want to talk to Putin anymore, and it's kind of, pull away. But China has continued to maintain ties with Russia, and that has caused a problem. Now, to be fair to China, it does seem that they do various military drills with multiple countries. So this is actually quite interesting. This is military exercise. This is the black bars, but you can see China does drills with Russia, U.S., Pakistan, Thailand, Australia, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, South Korea, and New Zealand. Now, granted, China does most of the drills with, say, Russia or Pakistan, but it does seem there is the U.S. on the chart. You can do there. And then you also have, Navy port calls and senior level visits. So you guys can take a look at this chart. It's actually a really interesting one, but there's a lot of nuances in something like this. I wouldn't put a ton of weight in there. And then this one is going to get buried probably with the GDP headlines, but it was very interesting. It said here, China shuts social media accounts over market and other rumors. So they're claiming there's 337 internet accounts that are essentially doing like market manipulation, that kind of stuff. The actual quote is fabricating and distorting public policy information and profiting from it. But, it is what it is. And one of the things that, again, for people who have never been to China, you may not know, what is it? You probably know this. There's a ton of people over there. And out of all these people, there's always someone doing something crazy. So it's, even though they try to have an authoritarian system, it's like you can control every action, every minute of what's going on. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's really funny when you're, in a place like China or like Vietnam or like in India. Sometimes these kind of places feel lawless because there's just like so much crazy stuff going on and so many people doing different things. And whenever the police come, you just give them cash, bribe, and then they walk away. So I don't mean to say that's that much different than USA, although I watch movies just like you guys. I don't know like how often, we bribe our American police officers if they come and say, give you a speeding ticket, and how do people actually give them cash? I have not heard of that myself. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I don't know. But I'll just tell you, a place like a Vietnam or like a China, that is fairly common. I would say it's probably more common in Vietnam than in China, but it certainly happens, and that is a thing. So that's just part of doing business. And the last thing I want to leave you guys with is whenever we, look at this kind of stuff, and sometimes it's like, oh, Chris, I don't care about China. I only care about USA. I just want to understand that we're all interconnected. China has many, many factories. Many of the American companies sell goods to China, or many American companies depend on, production coming in from China. I do think, though, that production is probably going to eventually move to India and Vietnam, and there will be a shift. So this does not bode well for young people in China. There's less opportunity over there. And I think that's why you keep seeing headlines regarding this youth unemployment, because that sort of predicts the future. And regarding financial markets or investments, you're essentially always investing for the future, right? So we'll see what happens with China, and we'll keep tracking the story. Love to hear your thoughts on any one of these things, and I'll catch you in the next video.